The Kuruc were the armed anti-Habsburg rebels in Royal Hungary between 1671 and 1711. The Kuruc army was mostly made up of serfs, including Hungarian Protestant peasants, but also many Slaversus name. According to Matthias Bell, an 18th-century scholar, the word was first used in 1514 for the armed peasants led by Georgi Doja. Bell supposed that the word Kuruc is derived from the Latin word cruciatus, ultimately from crux, and Doja's followers were called crusaders, because the peasant rebellion started as an official crusade against the Ottomans. Today etymologists do not accept Bell's theory and consider the word emerging in the 1660s in the forms Kuruc, Urok, or Kuruc to be of unknown origin. Its original meaning was understood as rebel, partisan, dissident. In 1671 the name was used by many, the Beglerbeg Pasha of Eger in what is today Hungary, to denote the predominantly noble refugees from Royal Hungary. Afterwards the name became quickly popular and was used from 1671 to 1711 in texts written in Hungarian, Slovak and Turkish to denote the rebels of Royal Hungary and northern Transylvania, fighting against the Habsburgs and the policies. The rebels of the first Kuruc uprising called themselves Bujdosok, or in official long form, different fugitive orders, barons, nobles, cavalry and infantry soldiers, who fight for the material and spiritual liberty of the Hungarian motherland. The leader of the last of the Kuruc rebellions, Francis II Rákóczi, also did not use this term. Contemporary sources often used the term malcontents to denote the rebels. The opposite term was Labánk, denoting Austrians and the loyalist supporters. According to the Chronicle of Szilágyi Findikli Mehmed Aga, a 17th-century Ottoman chronicler, the word Kuruc was a Greek word and meant polished, or salali in Turkish. History. The first Kuruc uprising. The first Kuruc uprising occurred in 1672. The Kuruc army gathered in the Pasha, where many refugees of different origins took shelter from the religious and political persecution occurring in Royal Hungary. They called themselves Bujdosok. The weapons were mostly pistols, lightsabers and fokos. The tactics and style of war were typical of light cavalry. The main subgroups were Protestants, who were disgruntled by Habsburg ambitions of the Counter-Reformation, nobles and soldiers from the Veges who were sacked by Habsburg generals. Later, when the Turks lost ground to the imperial armies and Austrian despotism intensified, Habsburg oppression of Hungarians played an increasingly important role in the motivation of the Kuruc. Initially, in August 1672, the Kuruc army invaded Upper Hungary, where they conquered the castles of Dózsa, Onod, Szentendrő and Tokaj. After they defeated the Habsburg army of Paris von Spankownia, Cass of the towns of Upper Hungary surrendered and many disaffected people joined them. For the Slovak and Ruthenian population of the northern counties, the two leaders of the army of fugitives were Palsipesi and Matyas, members of the minor nobility who previously took part in other anti-Habsburg movements. According to the recollections of Palsipesi, the fugitives began looting in the northern countries. In the guise of persecuting the papists, they pillaged whole counties. We began killing the plunderers, but to no avail. They didn't respect any officers. The Halfkriegsrat of Vienna immediately took some measures, strengthened the Habsburg troops, called more soldiers from Lower Hungary and made peace with the Hajduks. On the 26th of October 1672 the Habsburg army defeated the fugitives at Gay York. The rebels retreated across the line of the Tisza. After this initial success, the Habsburg government began systematic religious and political persecution in Royal Hungary. The most infamous case was the trial of 300 Protestant pastors who were sentenced to death in 1674, and who later were sold as galley slaves in Naples, causing public outcry all over Europe. Universitas of the fugitives. In 1675 the fugitives occupied Debrecen. Later in that year the town was sacked again by 3 different armies, as was not uncommon that time in troubled Upper Hungary. The fugitives tried to organize themselves as an independent community called Universitas or Comunitas. They issued decrees, sent envoys to foreign powers, made a seal and held diets. At the time they were already called Kuruc, although they never called themselves so. Between 1674 and 1678 the leader was Count Paul Weseleny, the cousin of the late Palatine Ferenc Weseleny. The fugitives established diplomatic connections with Poland in 1674 and France in 1675. In May 1677 France, Poland, the Principality of Transylvania and the Universitas of the fugitives signed a treaty in Warsaw, by which King Louis XIV of France guaranteed 100,000 thalers aid and assistance. The fugitives were obliged to attack the Habsburgs with an army of at least 15,000 men. Michael I Epaphi, the Prince of Transylvania, gave military and financial support to the Universitas. In the autumn of 1677 2,000 French, Polish and Tatar soldiers arrived in Upper Hungary. This small army, led by Colonel Beaumont, wasn't able to seriously threaten Habsburg supremacy. Royal Hungary became one theatre of the European war between Emperor Leopold I and Louis XIV. The president of the Viennese Half-Kriegsrat, Raimondo Montecuccoli, drew a plan of pacification under the title L'Ungherien nell'anno 1677. According to that, Royal Hungary would be occupied by 3 Austrian armies. The remnants of the Hungarian constitution abolished and a grand-scale program of German colonization implemented. Chancellor Paul Hocker, one of the most influential men in the Habsburg government, agreed with Montecuccoli's plan. In the Privy Council he declared that all Hungarians are traitors. Under Mály Teleki, in 1678 the fugitives accepted Mály Teleki, the Chancellor of Transylvania, as the leader. Prince Epaphi proclaimed war against the Habsburgs. Before that he had to beg leave the Ottoman Sultan. The Sultan demanded an unacceptable condition. In the case of success, all Royal Hungary should become part of the Ottoman Empire. On the 5th of April 1678, Prince Epaphi issued an ambiguous declaration to the people of Hungary. He announced that himself, together with the Polish and the French kings, took up the arms against the heavy yoke of oppression, and recommended the submission to the mighty Turkish emperor with a reasonable mind and sharp eye. The Kuruc army of Teleki, together with the Polish and French troops, advanced well into Upper Hungary, but they immediately retreated into Transylvania at the sight of the first Habsburg regiments. The failure wrecked Teleki's image as a competent leader. On the other hand, a small Kuruc cavalry troop occupied for a short time the most important mining towns and castles of Lower Hungary. The Great Kuruc uprisings in 1678. One of the most influential young noblemen of Upper Hungary and Transylvania, Imre Thököly, declared war against the Habsburgs. In August 1678, Thököly's army occupied almost all Lower and Upper Hungary. Habsburg rule in Royal Hungary quickly collapsed. The fugitives joined the Thököly uprising, and officially elected him the leader in Zobozlo in January 1680. The Kuruc troops were merged into Thokli's own army. That time onwards, the history of the Kurucs is synonymous with the history of the two great anti-Habsburg uprisings in the Kingdom of Hungary, between 1680 and 1711, i.e., the Thokli uprising and the Rákóczi uprising. Although these movements are generally called Kuruc Wars, these anti-Habsburg uprisings had a much wider social base and more complex political aims than the original Kuruc movements. See the history of the great Kuruc uprisings under the respective leaders, Imre Thokli and Francis II Rákóczi. Later usage. In the first half of the 18th century, the term was generally used to denote Hungarian cavalry soldiers serving in the Habsburg army, especially in the time of the War of the Austrian Succession. Many former Kuruc soldiers of the Rákóczi uprising joined the Habsburg army after 1711. The Prussians were also called Kurucs in Hungarian literature, for example by Joseph Jadani in 1790. The reason behind this strange usage was that all the enemies of the Labank Habsburgs were considered synonymous with the Kurucs. In the end of the 18th century, the word went out of usage in common parlance, and became an exclusively historical term for the rebels of Rákóczi in Thokli. In present-day South German language, Kruschturken is a swear word combining Kurazan and Turken with the meaning of curse it. In present-day Hungarian language, Kuruc is sometimes used to denote Hungarian national radicals. Kuruc Info is also a name of a far-right nationalist Hungarian web page.